And we are live. Wednesday night with those guys, and Wednesday night with those guys is sponsored by
those guys.
What's
I
going
throw
on,
that
everyone?
one in. What the hell?
What's going on, everyone? It is
Happy
Wednesday.
New Year. Or
It
as
is
Eddie
Wednesday.
Murphy say in a very funny movie, Merry New Year.
Anyway, it is Wednesday, the middle of the week, hump day. Our first day back for the year, Lawrence.
Yes.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year, man. Matt Bagwell, Wayne B, JSK, Fly Zone, JSK. Jody said he had to step out, but he'll be back. Russell
he was still in the chat.
Raymond, Recovery One Drone. Angie was here earlier. SJM Drones and whomever else may be lurking in the cut. Thank you. And
I saw Jody in here earlier.
Jerry Bauer. You seen him? Yeah, he was in earlier. But yeah. Happy New Year, everyone.
I think the first guy was Barkley the first one?
Jody was the first.
Well, because I saw he had came in and hit the like first.
Oh, no. The first person was Barkley that said.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, yeah, live in 41 hours too soon. I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
And then Jody came in. Okay.
Yeah, so make sure you guys feel free to hit that like button. What's up there, Angie?
Hey, Angie, what's good? Mikey, Flies on Drone. It should be a pretty decent stream tonight. At least we're hoping that it is.
I mean, we're expecting, a guest to come on tonight. Scheduled to come on and speak on the, those that advise you on the circular. So we'll see what happens.
SJM Drones, everybody. I see Northside Hawk. How are you? Do you get any sleep, Northside, man? Because when I wake up, you're on.
Who, Northside?
And when I go to bed at night, you're on. He has his phone or something attached to him at all times.
He's a busy man.
I see busy man. I see nothing wrong with being too busy though. Hold on. This is incredibly bright.
What's incredibly bright?
This light here in my face.
Oh, well, turn it down some.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do now. I turned it down too low. It was like blinding at one point.
No.
Okay, that's better. That's better. Not doesn't feel like someone has a floodlight on me coming from this way.
Well,
Matt Bagwell, everyone in the chat, what's going on?
No matter what, I could always make it look like it's daytime with the light reflecting off my glasses.
Yeah, right. But those of you who don't know, he has a very bright screen. It's not that it's bright; it's just that big. Dominic says he does sleep. Okay. All right.
No, it's not that.
I just was wondering what happened.
It's the light on the ceiling plus the light from
the screen. Okay.
Yeah, the way it reflects. I don't know how it does a thing where sometimes it affects how I can even see.
No whiskey for me. No more Wednesdays.
What happened?
No more on Wednesdays. Now I work. So you're listening to us while you're working.
You're working? Or you got to go to work after the stream is over.
Bill, Coast to Coast, what's
up,
good? Fly Guy Merrill.
What's going on, man?
How's everyone? Fly Guy Merrill.
You know
got to meet him personally at the day after Christmas, Ocean, New Jersey.
I did a little video for that, and I tried to keep it as short and sweet as possible. But
dude, it was brick. It was cold.
Well, no, I'm not saying that time being there we tried to keep it short and sweet. I'm just saying the video, because if I included everything that I wanted to include, the video would have been like 10 to 12 minutes long. And I don't think anybody wants to sit there and watch 10, 12-minute long video.
Yeah. I understand totally what you're talking about.
So it was cool. I mean, it's a nice little video.
It was fun. I got a little bit of footage from there too.
It captured the day. And I like that fact that you put your police your car chase
on YouTube.
on YouTube with Ken Herron.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Ken drives a police car.
Yep.
And with lights and everything. And he was putting his foot into the pedal.
Right.
And we were following him over to Lucy.
It was supposed to be a convoy, if you remember, but I don't know what the hell happened to the guys behind us.
He was by himself. He thought he was by himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. And Lawrence did a little video on it. So if you
just a short. I figured I would try a short.
It's nice little short video. If you get a chance,
37 seconds
it's out on YouTube.
But, one quick thing, Bill. You're 100% right. Phil Morris shit the bed. Phil Morris said, F everybody who's a paying lifetime customer. And you're either going to have to get Phil Morris 12.
Stay.
Huh?
No more updates, or you're going to stay where you are.
Yep. No more updates.
Because that's how I kind of read the message that they sent me. There was no more updates, or you would have to pay for the new service or the update.
Yeah, Fly Guy Merrill says, see, that was a cool vid of the chase. He got left, he had to GPS it. He got left behind. Yeah, because Ken was driving because he wasn't driving because he was in a police car, but Ken drives fast. If you see how he drives his little Mazda then hey, Chen Dynasty, then you would understand. But I think he actually forgot people were following him.
He puts his foot in it.
Right, but someone had asked on Facebook. No, Marcel had asked in a chat of the video, how is he allowed to drive that thing? Well, there were certain state markers that you have to be state identification markers you have to take off of the car,
right?
Like the car number. In order for it to be a collector's edition to drive, as far as I know, you have to take the original car number off. You may have to cover up and or change certain state logos, so it doesn't look like
there is no state logo on it.
Exactly my point. And on the back it says to protect our hobby, and on the other side, Heron Drone Patrol. So,
right.
And even though when we were driving to Lucy the elephant, the lady that was in front of him was speeding. Then she saw the police car behind her and she crawled to like 20 miles per hour, which made us suspect that if she was driving normally and she slowed down, she thought Ken was a real cop in the car behind her. That was funny.
Yeah, she slowed down to a dead stop.
He got free toll. Yeah, and he got free tolls in the car. He was saying, Fly Guy Merrill said.
I don't think you can get free tolls.
He got a few free tolls. He was saying they were letting him go. They were like, okay, officer. He was like, okay, and driving through. Not all of them, but a few of them.
Well, that's about to change everywhere. Full service is going away.
Okay.
It's going to be all plate readers.
But those of you who don't know,
and
go ahead.
Easy Pass. It's going to be all Easy Pass and plate readers eventually.
Okay, from what I'm just finding out, Filmora did buckle and says you lifetime supporters can stay lifetime supporters on that level. I have not watched the video. Bill just Coast to Coast just sent it to me. I just checked.
That's how I tell you. That's how I understood it when they sent me that message. That if you wanted to go any further than where you are right now,
right?
Then
but don't expect any support,
right?
At some time and point, they're gonna have to do something.
That's AKA we gonna mess with it.
They're gonna mess with it. Said you don't want to use Filmora anymore. They're gonna say here's an update, and we know we said we weren't gonna give you an update, but this update is gonna help you guys that are gonna stay in that level. And that update is gonna flash Filmora 12. Get it soon. And after about 30 days, your version isn't going to work no more.
Because what you
Remember the
do,
antivirus that was for free, Herman? You use the antivirus, and on the 30th day or around the last week of the month,
you
the
get a virus.
antivirus comes up. You have a virus. We can get rid of it, but your subscription, your free subscription expired.
Well,
Yeah, I remember all that.
that's how a lot of that what they call it, malware and all that shit gets in there.
It was an actual antivirus with a virus, and only their virus company could get rid of it, of course, supposedly. The video I sent you is only 2 days old.
A long time ago, that was jacking people's cell phones and tablets. Even though with the cell phone and the tablet, you could do the whole factory reset and eliminate it.
Right.
Yeah, but like I said, yeah, we had a few things to talk about tonight. The one thing that I know everybody wanted to hear about was the the advisory circulars.
And we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, well, Ryan Latourette is supposed to come on later on and talk with us about it.
Yes.
Probably answer a few questions. There's a lot of things that people are worried about. I've been hearing about it for the longest time. A lot of things that people have been worried about, and I know that Draymond, Recovery One, was talking about these
kudos to you, Draymond.
Advisories a few days ago, and he had brought these things to people's attention, and
yes, because we do. Go ahead.
We do a weekly live stream, and many of these things we've covered along the way, throughout the years on some of these subjects, and we've talked about them because and going back and doing my own homework and stuff like that, I come across a lot of things, and I wonder sometimes some of the things that I've talked about come up. They come up again, and like I said, we cover a lot of things on this stream. Not to blow my own horn or anything like that. I mean, everybody, like what they like. I just got so caught up in the whole drone industry that I'm interested in everything, and I try to share that information with everyone as much as I know. I've been doing this a little while now, live stream while almost 4 years, almost going on. Yeah, almost.
Michael Blades.
And I've been flying drones longer than that. And I've seen a lot of things happen and a lot of changes throughout the time. Some of the things that people come into the industry and inherit now, they enjoy that I weren't there when I first started flying. But we saw Lawrence. I mean, you probably got the email. I'm quite sure of that. You know what I'm saying to you? I know you got the email with with DJI sent out an email.
Yes.
That, talking about, I guess we all know what their first product release is going to be for the year. We all thought it was going to come in last year, but I guess we're going to see it now. But in the Ronin family, Lawrence, that's what they're releasing, I guess.
Yes, it is their first product of the year.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that there were pictures of the goggles special edition.
Right. Yeah.
We
thought that's what a lot of people thought that's what was going to come out first, but
psych.
This has hit the way, but DJI put out a lot of products last year, and now I see they're off and running again already for the year, right? Well,
right. The Ronin that they're offering is this one here. Hold on, let me open it up.
The new one is supposed to come out.
Turn sharing on.
It should be on.
Okay, it is actually. My bad.
Oh, see what you did now?
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I guess, right?
This is it right here in the middle.
Huh?
This is the new lighter Ronin.
Yeah, that's the new joint that they're supposed to come out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I guess that when they did this, it's supposed to replace the last one that came out a couple of years ago, I guess. What the C2.
Yeah.
This is the RS3. We
Mm-hmm.
saw the RS3 come out. You know, that one was announced what, in June last year,
Yeah.
replacing the RS two.
In
So
fact, it
now
was
this RS3
introduced.
mini, this RS3 mini, right, as they calling it, I guess that's
Yeah.
supposed to replace the RSC2, which is
Yeah. It was right here.
the RSC2.
Here's the RSC2. You have one. Hold on, let me stop sharing. There you
Yeah,
go, so everybody can see yours.
the RSC2, right? It's a nice
Mm-hmm.
gimbal. It works very well. I mean, it's for it can handle almost any of
Hey, Chris.
your mirrorless cameras, your smaller mirrorless cameras, because you got to take into consideration the lenses and stuff like that with balancing. So you can't really put that big of a camera. That was where the bigger one came into play. Yeah, it's getting a little dry there. But yeah, the RS3 is where you go with your bigger cameras. But the mini now, which they're calling it the mini now instead of the
Happy New
C2.
Year.
So I guess that's what they're doing. That's
Right.
to carry what, smaller payload.
Yes, yes. The
Yeah,
smaller mirrorless cameras.
yeah, that's supposed to carry. Oh yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. But last year, DJI came out with a handful of products. Keep in mind, this
Mhm.
Ronin that they're coming out with in a couple of days is number one. Last year they came out with two Ronins, a ground station unit, a
Mhm.
drone in a box, the Mavic
Right.
3, the Mavic 3 Spectrum, the
Mhm.
Mini 3, the Avata, the DJI goggles 2. Remember the little gimbal
Mhm.
they made? And then they
Mhm.
also came out with the M30. They
Right.
came out with a handful of, they were busy last year.
Right. They came
They
out
were
with a
very,
whole
very
lot of
busy
products and kept the whole country busy with the things that they
and
were
kept the
putting
whole
out.
country happy. I
Well,
didn't hear no complaints.
not just the United States, but we can only speak for our community and and the products that were purchased. And I'm quite sure they flew off the shelf in other places too.
Of course.
I was just wondering. I check into this, and I know once I say it, somebody else will run and do it. But which products sell the most where, and who like,
That
and
would be a great logistical number, the
yeah,
stat
like
to
we
find out.
we go crazy over the drones. It seem like whenever they put out an Osmo or something like that, we want that too. So
Mm-hmm.
are they the same way in other countries, or they more prefer other things? I know, like in Asia, like China to be more
The
specific.
RoboMaster.
Yeah, they're more into those than we are here, because I've seen some of the events and stuff that they have, and I don't know of anybody that's doing that here. I
That's a
could be
good.
wrong.
That's those are some good numbers. That
I
would
could
be
be wrong.
some good stats. I'd like to know what is sold more in the
I never
United
looked
States,
into it.
what's sold more in Asia, what's sold more in the
Yeah,
UK. Hey
I'm
Ed,
quite
love
sure
my
the
drones.
numbers are
Happy New
out there
Year.
somewhere.
Happy New Year, Ed. Hope all is well.
I'm quite sure the numbers are out there somewhere. I just never looked into it.
Well, we
But
have
I
to
did
make that
I
a
did
project.
hear that we were not number one though in
Drone sales.
in their product sales.
Oh, I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah, I did hear that. I thought that we were, but we're not.
No, apparently they buy drones around the world a lot more than we do here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly and truthfully speaking, that is the only way one company like this could put out so many products like that.
Mm-hmm.
in 1 year
Mm-hmm.
and not worry about flooding the market with any of the products, even though they're not, many of the products are not alike. You know what I mean? They're not, I mean, yeah, they come out with a couple of drones, but they never came out with 2, 3 drones in the same class. They came out with a drone for each class, and then they came out purpose-built drones for work-related things, and then for step down level in the drone industry for the built product, the
Right.
purpose-built drone.
Right.
That's how
I
you
agree.
went from, your Matrice 30, which started it off, to end up with, the Mavic 3 and
5 of them.
level.
Keep in mind 5.
Yeah, that's how you step it down to accommodate that. What Bill sent me? Oh,
What? Oh, that was the video about Filmora. I
oh,
told him I would check it out after the live stream. For
oh
those of
no.
you who use Filmora and are a paying customer, such as
Mhm.
Herman and I, and you have Filmora 11, which is the last version. And if you've been on Mars somewhere and haven't heard,
Mhm.
Filmora has just told all of the lifetime customers that they're coming out with 12 and they want you to pay a
Mhm.
monthly fee. Make a long story short, people have been bitching and writing and threatening lawsuits, and Filmora is going to let us still be lifetime customers, but that's about it for now. And for how long, we don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'm just I like I said to you before, I took a look at the message that they sent us, and I thought that, to myself that, yeah, hey, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I didn't think it was shutting us off. It said that you could use the software up to where you are, and that's that after that. No, nothing after that. That's what I read from the message that they sent me. Well, wait, listen. Well, like I said before, Lawrence, when we were talking earlier, when we first started the stream, I mentioned that how we had gone through about 10 years of seeing so many different things happening. And
Right.
I'm not saying that we here personally, have seen 10 years. We've seen a lot of the 10 years, and I was looking at some things and I was like, wow, and I'm reading and I'm like, a lot of these things started to come into play around the time when I first started flying drones. And I first had saw them and I was like, there was no I couldn't afford them. When I was looking at the prices on them, I was like, I couldn't even afford that. And by the time that I did get into it, it was around the time of the explosion of this whole drone industry.
When
And
DJI was making an explosion here in the States.
well, at that time, I think just before that, I think it was like DJI was around like at like about 9 years at the time, believe it or not, because there was other things that they had done before coming out with Phantom, with the Phantom series.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and then they got into these drones, and then they started doing, getting, GoPros or whatever slapped onto the bottom of them for you to be able to capture your footage. And these things were just what they were, just a flying craft I mean, they flew, but they weren't as, what you're flying today. They flew well. I mean, they actually improved these things throughout the time, but
Over the 10 years,
you
yeah, we've seen a
looking,
lot of technology.
well, see, but going back, not even 10 years with DJI, because um at the time, I'm not even saying 10 years with DJI because, like I said, at the time when I first purchased my drone, it was like DJI was like 9 years, going to their 10th year of it being around. So you're going back to like 15, 16,
Yeah.
And I was reading some stuff and I thought, and I was like, this sounds like a good topic and like a good to talk about because a lot of guys see things for where we are and don't know where a lot of things have come from.
True.
And there was a time where here in the United States, for flying a drone for commercial purposes was unheard of.
Yeah.
Companies that wanted to do so had to get an exemption from the FAA under 333, to be able to do that. So we've seen a lot happen. At that time there was no Part 107.
There was no obstacle avoidance.
Right. There was no, well, I'm saying Part 107. There was no Part 107 at that time. Like I said, companies that wanted to do that between, between 2014 and 2016, that's where the change started. They had to have that exemption, and in 2016, we seen Part 107 introduced, making a way for commercial operations to become, possible, to be able to be, to make it a little easier, to pave the way for it.
Right.
107 was really big in the drone industry, but a lot of people were confused, I think, a little bit and afraid of it a little bit. And, we've seen it, come into play. Most of us now are Part 107,
Right. For the better part, a lot of us are.
Yeah, a lot of the guys, a lot of guys, like I said.
And you were saying, and before,
mm-hmm.
a lot of people that I know, more than half the people I know were 107. Back then, you were saying it will come to a time and point where you might have to be a 107 to fly. And if you're not, you are stuck in a park. May not be the park that you like, but we'll get into that.
I didn't want to really jump.
No, we'll get into that later.
But in that saying that, at the time, you got to remember, like, still in 2015, 2016, these things was still just flying cameras.
Yep.
They had no obstacle avoidance.
Hell, the GPS barely worked good enough.
You know what I'm saying too?
Especially if you owned a Hubsan. It did that toilet bowl effect of death. It started spinning like this.
There was no this beautiful obstacle avoidance that people have the pleasure of dealing with now. So in 8 years, hardware, operating systems, they have improved so much. We've checked out some of the things from some of the FAA symposiums along the way. And we've checked out, listened to some of the things that they've said about remember when that was a big issue of when it happened, when it first started with the corridor, with New Air operating the corridor up in
in New York, upstate New York.
But was that
in Rome? I think it's Rome, New York.
Right, but it stretches along it's 50 miles, so it's just not in Rome.
I think that's where it's based.
Right, it is.
I'm doing a Google search now. Where's the 50-mile corridor?
Well, you're right on that. It's up there in Rome, but it's being operated with New Air's up there doing some great things up there. We've seen a lot of things, like I said.
It's between Syracuse. It's between Rome, New York, and
And
Syracuse.
Syracuse, the airport of
Yes,
Syracuse, right,
I just did a search.
right, from one airport to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I said a lot of things have happened in the 8 years of these systems and stuff like that along that way. But we've covered so many of these things, and this is the same thing we talked about. What we did with the year we covered in review, but not to on that, but drones since then have become so much easier and safer to be able to operate these things.
Can I do
That
a quick? Can I ask a quick question while we're
Mhm.
doing this story?
I'm
I want to
listening.
know really quick while we're
Mhm.
talking about this story. How long have you guys in the chat have been flying? A
Mhm.
year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years? I'm going
You'd
to
be
tell you, I'm
surprised
coming
some of
up on.
these guys been flying quite some time.
Right. I just want to know while we're doing the story, just have an idea. Because I've been flying coming up on 7.5 years, seven and a half years
Mhm.
now. I'd like to know how long you guys in the chat have been
Mhm.
flying while we finish the rest of this story. Because, like Herman said, 10
Yeah.
years, a lot has
A
happened.
lot of
A
things
lot.
because before that, flying a drone commercially was unheard of, and like I said, we saw a lot of change happen since we've been flying. Imagine from that far back, and you said what, 7 years, or is it 8 years you've been flying?
And coming up on 7.5, I think it's
Sure, it's
8, but
not
I'm being
8 years.
mild.
Yeah,
I'm
because
being mild by saying it, seriously.
right, because yeah, all right. So okay. But anyway, the industry grew. Right? We saw the industry grow. And we've seen it
Hmm.
still growing in leaps and bounds, but it's still in the infancy. So in 2016, not jumping, but 2016, a lot of guys see what it is today, but it wasn't what you see it is as today. In 2016, the FAA released its first version of the Before You Fly app.
Hmm.
You know, in 2016, that was the first version of it, and a lot of and it's not what you see it is today. Believe me when I tell you, it wasn't as sophisticated as it is today. You know,
You're right
and
about that.
and in 2017,
We no longer do the GPS dance.
oh well, in 2017, all right, the low altitude authorization and notification capability was introduced to us, Lance, making another path to commercial drone flight easier. And I say these things because a lot of guys say, well, what about the hobbyists? But if you check it out, most of this stuff is pertaining and always going to pertain to making it easier for commercial use. So I'm not jumping in any way, but say, we saw this usage of Lance, and you make jokes about it on the timelines about how guys always say, "Oh, I'm not gonna use that." And listen, but it took a while for this to actually make it across the country.
It
Lance,
did, because they
Lance,
cried about Lance like little
Lance wasn't
bitches.
right. Lance wasn't everywhere.
Right.
It wasn't
But
everywhere. It wasn't available at every airport.
but
You
you
know,
remember the conversations we were having. Oh,
right.
no one's gonna tell me what altitude I can fly at. No one's gonna
Mhm.
tell me when I can take off. Well, all of you heifers are using Lance
Well,
in one
no,
way
not
or
so
another.
much that, but Lance like I said, made it a lot easier because you remember the days of having to call the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. We
You
used to have to
understand what I'm
call
saying?
JFK and LaGuardia and
You
all of
remember
that.
those
Yeah.
days, and the system stopped that. You know,
Lance stopped that. Lance,
that's
whatever
what
you
I'm
want to
talking.
call
That's
it.
what we're talking about. The
Yeah, Herman.
yeah.
Wow. I remember, man. Wow, that was a while
You
back.
see what I'm saying
We
to
used
you?
to have It was because
You see
I
what I'm
remember
saying to you?
calling the airport before I left my house for authorization in an hour when I was going to get to where I was going, let them know I was in the park. Even if I went to a local park, I called the airport because I'm within a 5 mile radius of the airport. Sometimes I got authorization. Most of the time I got authorization. Very
Was
little
that
did they
one
tell me
dude?
no.
There was
Huh?
that one dude that, you know,
He got famous on YouTube at JFK. I know you're talking about. I don't know his name, but if you live in New York City and you call JFK, this guy made a YouTube channel on
mm,
telling drone pilots no and getting them pissed off and getting into arguments with them, right, Herman? From
no,
JFK. He became
can't fly
famous
here.
for that. He was a JFK air traffic controller, and his YouTube, I'm going to try and find it. His YouTube channel, he did nothing but people call up. He says, it's probably another damn drone pilot. And it was recordings of him telling the pilot would be like,
Well,
I'm going to fly here, I'm going to fly there. And he'd like, no,
that's what made this thing so good that you didn't have to.
yeah, you don't have to deal
So,
with him.
but it wasn't everywhere, Lawrence. It wasn't
True,
everywhere. It
true.
wasn't in
At
every
first,
country. I mean, well, not every country. It wasn't in every city or every state. It wasn't. It didn't reach it. And as time grew, it grew and moved on to more and more people to what was it? And you think about this one, right? You said 2017, right?
hmm
But in 2022, right? What was that? Aloft announced that before you fly had processed more than 20 million airspace searches.
yep, for authorization or just to see
No, no,
if you were
no, for
flying in the
20
right
million
place.
airspace searches.
Yes.
Just searches alone for like to check out. So that means that the industry at that time, by that time, guys are already becoming more educated in what they needed to know and what they needed to do to be able to do certain things.
hmm
And we saw that's what I mean about the growth and the involvement of the industry. You know, also in 2022, right?
Yeah.
Lance, right, for commercial authorization, right, increased more than 100% over the previous year of authorization process.
Right.
And we had covered that on Wednesday night with those guys, 142. There
Interesting.
was a few things that, what'd you say? Oh, you
No, I was saying interesting.
no, but I'll see what happens on that. But
I seemed, oh, I thought I
yeah,
was
but
frozen on the split screen. I
oh, you thought you
wasn't.
was frozen. No, no, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as keeping along with what we're talking, you know, and I say this and I keep saying it about how safe and all these things that these drones have become that
hmm
a lot of guys don't realize it. A lot of things that we started with, they no longer have to deal with. you
Like
know,
no obstacle avoidance.
well, that was the one, but we saw in this is the one that was an issue for people over going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and eh, you know it came to play back in 21 where we saw the rules for operating over people and at night implemented,
hmm
and I think that kind of cleared. It was I kind of think it was a little clear to people because that it mainly pertained to guys who were dealing as far as 107. We know that uh, those questions that pertain to those operations were on the 107 recurrent tests for those who we're taking recurrent tests, and for those who even out taking the test for the first time, these
Right.
questions will be on that test.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that's saying
Remote ID
these
test.
things may
Remote.
yeah
Go
yeah,
ahead.
those things were, these are things that, like I said, always geared towards making commercial drone use a little easier. You know, never, you know, now you talk about we'll talk about the test. The test now is online now for your recurrent test now. You no longer have to schedule and go down to the testing center. And I don't know if that's everywhere. I'm quite sure it might be. I don't know. But I do know for the first time that you have to go down to the testing center. You know, a year after the first mention of beyond visual line of sight flight, because remember, going back, I mentioned earlier, we talked about symposiums
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
And how they're telling you what's going to happen, but no one
Yeah,
seems to watch them or pay
the
attention to them.
symposiums would tell you what's to come. And one of the things that they spoke on, talking about beyond visual line of sight briefly, was how the cameras and sensors in these drones had to get better before you would see something like the beyond visual line of sight. Systems had to be in place that, you know, for safety, for awareness of what's around. And you know, I look at what's going down now with drones from the time this has occurred, to see some of the things that's being done right now, and that's still in a trial period. The industry is making its strides, whether it be big, small, and different, whatever you think, but as large as it is, we're still in infancy.
Hey, Deneen.
And like I said, it's growing. I haven't heard that yet, Lawrence, but like I said, moving along with this, you know, and the things that I was talking about here. And I said the implement of the rules for operating at night and over people.
Mm-hmm.
We saw those rules come to play in 20.
Right.
And then I said to you, a year after first mention of beyond visual line of sight, remote ID, remote ID was announced, right?
Mm-hmm.
In what, 2019? And we'll probably see it implemented this year. And I think that this is one of the things that has confused a lot of people. Excuse me. And we've talked about remote ID.
Glad you said that word, remote ID.
We've talked about remote ID on this stream a lot. We've had Ryan on in the past to talk about it a little. He's talked about it a little bit, but mostly about some of the cases that have been plaguing drone pilots across the country is what he's dealt with. He's very well versed on a lot of things. That's why I wanted him to come on tonight to speak with us. But continuing right along with where we were talking and saying, as remote ID was introduced and we are expecting to have it implemented. And I mean, I'm quite sure
September 23.
a lot of guys are, hey, Cardozo, what's up? Hey, what's up, Kenny? A lot of guys are confused a little bit about why we needed remote ID. And remote ID, and we even talked about this back from when Tom was here with us, was part of
Mark Fisher.
smaller, is a small part of a big picture, you know, and it wasn't so much about caring, being able to identify you and know who you were and
Hmm.
this, that, and the other. And I don't think it was even really going to be implemented for even that officer on the corner to really know who you are or to hear who you are. I don't really think that that's what it was.
I don't think so either. First of all, you have to even,
Um, many people wanted to refer to it as a license plate for your drone. And with you, and even I myself said that with the way that remote ID was being rolled out and what was to be, broadcasted, I myself said that no, that's not technically really not a license plate, and I've come to try to look at it differently, and because with a license plate on my car, you drive past everyone in the street. You can capture the number if you wanted to. There's absolutely nothing you can do with it unless you are law enforcement. So when
right.
they were saying that the whole thing about everyone was worried about the whole broadcasting of where the pilot was located, um, I want to believe I'm not that special. You know what I mean? That everyone wants to know where the hell I'm at while I'm flying. We live in busy New York area. We've flown drones from the street. People have walked past us and people have kept it moving. We've had vests on. We've been out there. We've had cones out and people keep it moving.
Radios, everything.
Right. People, most part, keep it moving. They have their own shit to tend to. Nobody, and you're in busy New York. If all the people wanted to, they could run up on you right there and then. But that's another subject. But I had the tendency to I did kind of look at it, more so as that digital license plate. Why? Because if I want to operate in the airspace, because that's why if you learn to respect it more when you take that Part 107 or you study to take the Part 107. You respect it more.
True. Very, very
It's
true.
not
I
just the
agree.
thing that I was able to purchase at Best Buy or when I got it from wherever I got it from and I could fly it because it's mine. You have a tendency to respect it more when you do that. You put in to get the knowledge in what it is that you're doing. And
Well, I see, I
yeah.
see, we have the same thing in the chat that we had when people were talking, we were talking about Lance, Ellie, and,
uh,
and C. They were saying, no one would be able to tell me how high to fly and blah, blah,
uh,
blah. And Steve and Drones, I hope you're being facetious by saying no remote ID for me. But
no,
you
I
guys were kicking and hold on. You guys were
mhm,
kicking and screaming
mhm,
when Lance was being introduced, and oh, they're not going to tell me how high to fly and where I'm going to go.
mhm,
And
mhm,
everyone here has used Lance at some time and point,
mhm. No,
and
I
we've accepted
listen.
it, and it works.
No, I understand what you're saying, Lawrence, and I understand where he may be coming from, and I
Right.
can't speak for the man, but hobby wise,
If you want to
got
fly.
guys looking at this two different ways, and like I said to you before, I'm looking at this and I'm speaking from commercial use because we fly camera drones as they call it, and these drones are used in a certain use case scenario. This is what we're saying that the use case scenario for these drones has evolved. So for the guy who's out there using this drone just for hobbies to get his kicks and tricks and fly, acro, do his little, do what he wants to do, enjoy
Mm-hmm.
his bills and stuff like that. Even with the guys that fly in the AMA fields, that build these planes and want to enjoy that, the whole hobby got turned upside down because of the drones. Let's be honest with ourselves. You know, no. Is that not right? They were flying fine for years with no problem. So let's be for real now. So when you start getting into this remote ID, you know, it's all of this stuff was more so geared towards whenever you're gonna be flying out there and this, because we talked about this. Their plan is to create UTMs. They want to create an unmanned traffic system, management system, to be able to manage drones that are in the sky. That's what they've been working with.
And if you want to fly above 200 feet,
and,
you're going to need remote ID.
And, you know, and this is what we've been talking about, them operating up there in Rome. And, you know, so this part, remote ID was just part of that. It was a small part of the whole big picture. And you have to be identifiable if you're going to operate in the airspace. When you took one part 107, you had to know, you had to have knowledge base of what goes on in the airspace, how to identify airspace.
Correct.
You know, you had to have that knowledge. You had to have the knowledge of being able to read weather reports and stuff like that. And
Gary says, good point. How many of us drive without license plates?
And well, that's what I said. But that's where the argument can always be made, because with your license plate, I can capture your license plate. I can't do anything with that information if I'm not law enforcement. But now, if you're talking about when people are afraid of this app that would let you know where the pilot is, I don't think that we're that special. I don't think too many people care. Unless you have been a nuisance to them already. You know.
Exactly. Hey, Corey.
That's neither here nor there.
But now we have a site here, because we have 9 minutes left before we move on to the next topic. But we have a site here. There are people, I'm going to share this if you don't mind, Herman. There is a site here. Oh, here it is. Got it. Called Drone Tag.
Right.
And they have the solutions for remote ID. Right now, there are a handful of companies out there that are coming out with chips. You FPV guys, they got you covered too.
You know what's funny? So I was going to bring this up later on in the stream, but go ahead.
Well, it's. I'm sorry, but I didn't think we had time to talk about it. But this is actually one of the units. This is a Drone Tag Mini. It only weighs 30 grams and it stays charged up to 8 hours. Also, it has a plug for external antennas. But as this is supposed to be something that you may attach to an older style drone, and if you're wondering how big it is compares to a cell phone, it's maybe compared to this cell phone right here, maybe 2/3 the width height of the cell phone. But for you FPV heads, drone module, they're working on something that you will plug into your flight controller. We're developing a remote ID that will be connectable with your flight controller. And right here, you see the antenna leads and soldering joints. These are rough pictures or ideas, but we're headed in that direction. And before anyone asks again, and I know it's going to come out there, and if you chase the FPV, no way, I ain't doing it. before I put it out there, and they ask, yes, you can fly. You don't have to comply, but you'll be limited.
Well, Lawrence, I just want to get through this whole rant so that way we can bring Ryan in to
go. Let's do it.
Well, it's not really a rant, but like I said, we've seen so many things happen with drones. Go back to as far back to before me on flying. Say what was that, 2013 and going into 2015 where I started.
Right.
Drones mostly used to capture pictures of homes, like weddings and stuff like that, and other less sensitive subjects. Now come full forward, what are drones doing? We see drones now capturing more sensitive and more sophisticated objects and things, making some really sophisticated 3D models, like of stuff like telecom towers, bridges. They've even assist police and SWAT teams with stuff like that in their industry. We've seen some of these things even carry two-way communications now. We see the enterprise drones and stuff like that with some of these things that are going on. We've seen so much. We've seen so much. We went from having to operate drones from right in front of us, from manipulating the sticks, to what man now can operate a drone on Mars from right here on Earth.
Yeah.
That's leaps and bounds, or to talking about where a drone wasn't even capable for man in commercial space, much less the drone hobby. We see so much. What is it? Walmart is partnered with Drone Up. Flytrex is partnered with many fast food companies across
food, medication,
different states. Zipline and Wing are now here in the United States. And Matternet. We saw Matternet first ever type certification. Even though they were operating from back in 22 over Wake Med with Dr. Gwen, flying flights from one location of the hospital to the other beyond visual line of sight. These things are coming to play. Things are coming, but anti-drone tech is coming. Because when we start talking about drones that operate from fixed sites and stuff like that, where these power companies, they're going to fight for those regulatories to allow those things. So I don't know, what are you going to see? So what, a notice to proposal for rulemaking for what, beyond visual line of sight is going to come next? Who knows? But I would like to bring Ryan on, and we talked about mentioning these few things that happened along the last 10 years, and we did say we were going to have him come on to talk about the 2 articles that were before us, the advisories. So without any wasting any more time, I'd like to bring him on so he could talk to us about it.
Yeah, so, give him a second. We are still connecting.
Yeah, he'll be
here. Give him a sec to join in on us. Got to put we have to put more quarters in the slot to speed up the internet for us all. So your picture is not on, Ryan. That's the only thing you don't have.
Well, that's what I'm working on.
Well, see, you got to put them quarters in faster, man. I got 10 rolls. I got 10 rolls of quarters, dude. I'm always ready. You know what you get for a Christmas gift from me? A roll of quarters. Anyway, take your time till you're dressed up. Wait.
Everyone, we have friend of the show. We have friend of the show, friend of the drone community. Everyone's best friend in the community, Ryan Latourette.
Yes.
All right, can you see me now?
Yeah, we can see you.
I'm in a brand new setup. I'm in a new room. I'm doing some renovations, so we're trying this out.
Okay.
And you're going Grizzly Adams on us.
I like the color.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I like the color of the wall you got there.
Working on it.
And you're dating yourself if you knew who that was, because
and I did know who that was.
Well, you knew who he was, Lawrence. What'd you say about yourself?
Yeah, well, I admit it. Not a problem. What's up, Ryan?
All is good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man, to you and your family as well.
It's going to take me another 2 months before I, do 2023, but we are there already. So
okay. Well, to let everyone, who's listening, watching, lurking, whatever you may be, Ryan has been helping the drone community fight the good fight whenever we've been wrong. And he's been that guy that comes along and helps out and tries to make the wrong right. And a lot of times, Ryan's right on it. And a lot of times it's just, you made a mistake, but but neither here nor there. Ryan does this, and this is not his regular thing. But Ryan, if for those of you out there that don't know you, could you kind of like tell everyone who you are, what do you do?
You bet. So
into this.
I've been flying for 10 years now, and just love it. I see the need in this industry and community to get together and fight the good fight. And so that's what I've been trying to do. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to become the Director of Regulatory Affairs for the Great Lakes Drone Company. And so we look at all kinds of different things. And then I'm one of the founding members of the Michigan Coalition of Drone Operators that really has stepped things up in terms of fighting for drone preemption laws at the state level, and hopefully expanding that out nationally, which is a huge deal. We've had some great successes in court. We fight against the regulations, the overzealous regulations, both from the FAA as well as from those little local communities that think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die from the little 3-pound drones in the air. No, you're not. So we're gonna fight you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ryan, I don't know if I'm jumping into it, but what I wanted to know, I don't know where we should start, but I guess with asking you about, advisory article 91-57C. What was that? The exemption for limited recreational operations, unmanned aircraft?
You bet.
Like, how does that affect us and the common guy here as far as I know it covers a lot of things on it.
It's a lot of letters, numbers that jumble together, right? But right. Kind of the interesting thing, 9157 C came out in October, so it's been around for a while. Mm-hmm. And it was preceded by 9357B as well as 9357A. So we've had this around for forever, basically. Mm-hmm. It began under Part 101, which old timers go, oh, I remember that. It's Part 101 is still around for things like kites and model rockets, right? What they've done is they've shifted and said, okay, model aircraft have its own designation now. Mm-hmm. And so we've gone through those iterations, but the latest iteration is C. And what it did is it encapsulated what we have in the 2018 FMRA. That's the FAA Modernization and Reform Act from Congress, where Congress threw out, they said, all right, we are no longer having Part 101. We've gotten rid of the 336 exemption for aircraft, and we've created this new thing called 44809. Mm-hmm. And it's still one and the same thing. So instead of being called hobbyists, now you're called limited recreational flyers. Just a different name, but it's still the same thing. Now, the one key thing with this new updated version of 9357A C is that it's moving us towards some of the things that are coming with remote ID. So a couple of key items. If you looked at the old version, 9357B, and versus the new, you're going to see some similarities where recreational flyers can still fly free from the grips of Part 107, right? So right. It is a carve out. We often say, oh, well, it's not two different regulations. Well, yes, it is. Part 107 is one set of regulations. 44809 is another. 44809 is a carve out that allows you to do things that would otherwise not be able to do in 107. And so you have to make a choice. If you're going to go fly before you lift off from the ground, you have to say to yourself, I am going to fly by 44809, or I'm going to fly by Part 107. You can't cross the two. It's what Ghostbusters. Now I'm dating myself, right? You can't mix the streams. You got to choose at the head of the flight, and then when you're doing that, you follow all the regulations. So if you're flying 44809 and you violate one of the regulations of 44809, then you are automatically pushed over into 107.
107.
And you don't want to do that. So let's example, right? I'm flying 44809 and I start to fly out of my visual line of sight. The moment that I do that, I am now no longer flying 44809. I'm considered violating Part 107.
Correct.
It's kind of odd. Yes, they're two different things, but you're always going to fault from one over to 107.
Well,
yeah.
No, you mentioned the 44809, and I just want to point out, if you are an avid drone pilot, such as all of you are, hint, hint, nod and just smile. If you use the Aloft app or before you fly, one of the options they give you is to fly recreationally as a Part 107. So like you said, it's already there. It's just going to become more prominent now.
Right. And
well, see, I think that's
the takeaway here, right, is to understand that there are differences between the two entities, right? So in 44809, I can fly as long as I'm flying purely for recreational interest, right? I'm out here enjoying myself. I can do some things that I can't do in Part 107. That's going to sound odd to you, right?
Okay.
So in Part 107, if I want to fly over people, right, I'm going to be severely limited. Severely, right? The only time that I can fly over people with a Part 107 is if I have a Category 1 drone, right, that has the shrouded prop, so I'm not going to be able to cut anybody, and it's got to be under 0.55 pounds. Now, take over to 44809. No such regulation exists. So as a limited recreational flyer, technically, I can fly over people. Now, Part 107, folks, minds are blown, right?
Right. Now,
like, wait, what about
ask you?
Can you just repeat
but
that a
that's
little
what I was
slower?
going to ask you. Why wouldn't it fall back over to 107?
Right. Again, because they're two separate entities. So it's one set of laws over here. It's a completely different set of laws over here. And probably the biggest way to make that distinction is that when we look at Part 107, Part 107 regulations were made by the FAA. 44809 was made by Congress. Right? The FAA did not make 44809. Congress made 44809. So that's a big distinction between the two. Now, again, if you're going to fly over people with your, let's say you're flying a 4-pound drone over people, you take that Phantom and you're going to fly, over a crowd of people, I can guarantee you that the FAA is going to go, you know what? You are flying carelessly and recklessly. And so I'm going to say that you are in violation over here and put you over into the 107 anyway. But let's say I'm at an AMA field, right? And the AMA, the Academy of Model Aircraft, they've been around since the 1930s, longer than the FAA has actually been around, right? So if I'm at an AMA field and I happen to overfly the Air Boss and two others that are behind the safety line, I'm not going to be in violation of Part 107, right? I may be taking a hint from the Air Boss, hey, don't do that crap again, right? But I'm not going to automatically shift to a violation of Part 107. And that's a key.
And that is because of why? Because it's
because the regulations don't have that restriction.
I got you.
So probably another example, and this one actually is in well written out in 9157C. I keep bumbling over those numbers, but if we look at night flight, think about flying at night. In Part 107, you are required to have 3 nautical mile strobe lighting on your aircraft, right? So you have to have that anti-collision lighting on your aircraft to let other aircraft that are in the area know, hey, I'm here. There's something, some object, don't crash into me. In 44809, we don't have the same requirement, right? There is no lighting requirement in 44809. If you look at the regulations, you won't see anything about lighting. Now, the circular, the advisory circular has said, hey, if you are flying by recreational rules, or you are going to become a CBO, a community-based organization, we highly, highly, highly recommend and suggest that you have a guideline that says 3 miles, so that they're trying to hint, hey, put this in place, but it's not a requirement. So especially with these AMA fields, right? You have folks that they've created model aircraft that are basically to a T of what that major aircraft is. So you might have some guys that have created Spitfires, from the 1940s and 1930s. Those don't have any type of lighting on them that's night lighting, anti-collision lighting. So these old timers are going, you know what? I don't want to put that stuff on my plane. It's not going to make it look real anymore. Right. And the FAA is saying, we understand that. You were okay with that. You're in 44809. Stick to 44809.
Okay.
Now the trade-off, right, is that there are things that as a 44809 pilot, you cannot do that 107 can. So in 107, I can take my aircraft out and fly at night in controlled airspace. I can go out and get a Lance authorization to fly in a controlled airspace. I cannot do the same thing if I'm going to fly 44809. So I'm stuck in flying in Class G airspace as a limited recreational flyer. But Part 107, I'm good to go as long as I get my airspace authorization.
Now that brings me to 2 things I wanted to ask you about. One was, and I don't know if anybody in the chat had any questions, but as far as I know, there's been a big confusion with guys still to this date about the sub 250 and the registration of drones and where that drone can and cannot be flown. And that, and also as to operating at 400 feet, whatever, or above, whatever, in G-class airspace. Those were 2 things that I wanted to ask you about as far as that, because I think that it kind of ties in.
So let's take that second one, 400 feet, right? So that's a great example of the difference between 44809 and 107. So in 107, I can take my aircraft and I can fly not just 400 feet, but let's say I'm next to an obstacle. I've got a tower that's going up, whether it's a cell tower or, hey, the Sears Tower, right? The Sears Tower is in Class G airspace. Right. I can, as long as I'm Part 107, as long as I'm within 400 feet radius of that obstacle, I can fly up to 400 feet above that obstacle. So the Sears Tower, it's probably what, 1,200 feet tall, probably taller than that.
It's tall.
Yeah, it's very tall. So I could fly 400 feet above that tower as long as I keep the drone within a 400-foot radius of that tower. Now, I can't do that as a recreational flyer. Under 44809, you are absolutely limited to a maximum ceiling of 400 feet AGL. And I think that's another key too. When we talk about AGL, right? I can't look at it as, oh, I'm standing on a parking garage that's on the 50th floor, and I'm going to launch from there and go. No, AGL above ground level. So the moment you go over that edge,
right. Hey, Ryan, real quick, I do know the answer to this, but coming from you, it sounds so much more official. Cardoso Media Act, same rules apply for sub 250. You don't have to be registered, correct?
Well, that was the second question that I had asked him.
Well, yes. That's the second part. So sub 250, and I honestly, I hate the idea of calling it sub 250, and let me tell you why first. When we look at the regulations, everybody focuses on sub 250, but they're getting that out of Europe, right? We're in the United States. We don't deal with grams. What the hell are we talking about? Grams? No, we talk about pounds. So the FAA has qualified it to say 0.55 pounds, right? And when you look at 0.55 pounds, if you actually take that and translate it into grams, you come up with what? I think it's 254 grams. So there's a few extra grams. That's I don't know, 1 gram is a paperclip. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be, right? So always look at 0.55 pounds. And the other piece to that is to know that it's anything above 0.55 pounds that has to be registered. So if your drone is 0.558739 pounds, guess what? You are still okay not to register it because you have not exceeded 0.55 pounds. So the FAA does not do rounding. So as long as you're not at 0.56, you're good to go. Now, in terms of registration, you do not have to register that sub 0.55 pound drone if you are a hobbyist, right? Or a limited recreational operator. But if you're Part 107, if you're going to use that drone for any type of commercial operation, anything that's not fully recreational intent, then the FAA says, nope, you do have to register that drone. Right. So you got to make that choice. Now, honestly, it's $5, right? Who cares? $5 for 3 years. And then at the same token, who's going to check? So you got to, make your battles, but hey, it's $5
until something happens.
It's $5 if you pay it now, or it's $1,100 if you decide to ignore it and the FAA catches it. Which way you want to roll the dice.
Right. Lawrence, anything else you wanted to cover? Because I know there was a few things that under the distinction of the two, that any other questions from the field, man, Lawrence, in the chat? Anybody
as far as questions in the chat, no. But I want to know, what have you heard, and what direction are we headed as far as remote ID? We did a little story on Drone Tag. That's one particular company. I happen to know there's a few out there that are trying to make an FPV chip as well as a module for you to place on your older drones, because I put in the chat also that if you have a DJI drone, hint, and it was produced after 2021, December of 2021, 9 times out of 10, it's remote ID compliant.
Yeah. So, and you should say 2022, right? December 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I said it a little slow, a little hesitantly.
Actually, a lot of DJI drones, even produced before that, are potentially remote ID compliant. The nice piece about some of these drones, right, a DJI especially, is that they already knew that this was coming. They knew this was coming for years, right? So they had already put in stub ins to say, okay, we're going to allow broadcast ID, right? We just don't know what the protocols are. So we're going to have the software there just kind of ready to plug in at any time. And so DJI has gone back through and done software updates that you can now download as firmware to put onto your drone, right? So even if, I got a Mavic 3, but I bought it way back, right, when it was first coming out. That drone now I can do a firmware update and it's going to be compliant. So that's a nice piece to look into. If you are keeping up with your firmware, there's a decent chance that some of your older drones are still going to have that remote ID compliance in there.
Well, I think that only goes back as far as maybe to the Air series, the second edition of the Air.
I'm thinking along those lines too. But here's another one for you, Ryan. Since we're on a roll here, God Bless America asks, what is your recommendation for drone insurance? And that's very good because there are some companies that will hire you and let you use Verifly, and some companies put straight up no Verifly. Right. So if you could help with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's a great question. So one, take into account that there are two different types of insurance, right? The first is liability insurance. Right. That's what everybody wants that's hiring you, right? Because they know that if that drone comes down and crashes through their roof and causes a fire and burns the factory, they're out a ton of money. So they're going to ask, hey, can you get $1 million liability insurance or $10 million, whatever it might be. And so that's one type of insurance. The other type of insurance is going to be your haul insurance. And the haul insurance doesn't cover any damage to the property that you've hit, right? Instead, the haul insurance covers your drone. So you crash your drone, put it into a tree, whatever, it falls to the ground, burns up, whatever you need to replace the drone. Haul insurance is going to pay for that. So if you're shopping for insurance, right, you need to decide, do I need liability insurance or do I need haul insurance or do I need both together? There are some companies that will only sell you one or the other, right? So a great example, if you're a recreational flyer, right, you're probably going to look at State Farm. State Farm offers what's called a personal articles of protection policy, a PAP. Yep. And the PAP runs you $60 a year, right? Up to $60 a year, I should say. So some of the cheaper drones, they do a little less. But then that covers you such that if you have that drone stolen, if you crash that drone,
correct.
And it's nice to get that check to say, oh, yep, the drone's damaged, it's beyond repair. Here's a check. Go buy yourself a new one. That's haul insurance, right? But what they don't cover, you crash that into the neighbor's house and the house burns down. Yeah, they're coming after you, right? State Farm ain't paying it. So you still need liability insurance. If you're shopping for liability insurance, the Verifly is going to be that, one time I'm going to fly it for an hour, I'm going to cover it for an hour. That's why a lot of the companies are saying, I'm not going for that, because they don't get a certificate necessarily to be able to show. You might be there to show them one day and you're not going to fly until 3 days later, right? They don't know. And so they're like, that's true. Yeah, you could fake us out. So things like Verify is through Global Aerospace. So if you wanted to get, insurance, liability insurance, and they do haul insurance as well, you could go to Global Aerospace and they're going to sell you a policy for an entire year. And the price is going to be dependent upon, do you want haul insurance and liability insurance, or you just want liability insurance? And then they're also going to start asking questions about, hey, what drone are we covering? An M300, right, is going to cost a little bit more than.
What happens, Ryan, when you get car insurance and you don't get glass? Someone busts your freaking window.
There you go.
So
inevitable, isn't it?
That's the tendency that happens.
yeah, so I'm just saying that if I hope that answered your question. God bless America. Ryan,
And let's talk, quickly. If you want insurance and you're a recreational flyer, the AMA, right? I'm not a fan of the AMA, but I'm going to say it. $75 gets you a year's membership to the AMA, and that automatically gives you $2.5 million of liability insurance. So honestly, that's probably worth it right there, just to have that liability insurance.
The only thing is with that is that I think that even with that, I don't know if that's cleared up in the next advisory circular that was at 89-3 for the FAA recognized identified areas.
Yep.
I think that's where that mainly falls under, because if I'm not mistaken, that if you carry the AMA insurance when you travel outside of the AMA recognized area.
Yeah, so the AMA has been very particular on this, and they've said that it does not matter where you fly, as long as you are following their rules, then you will be covered by their insurance. So that's a relief. Now, again, they're going to make that qualification. You need to be following their rules. So if you do go and look at their safety guidelines, there are some very particular things in there that you might go, oh, wait a minute. So one of those is hand launch, hand catch. Guess what? Can't do it. The moment you are hand launching and hand catching, you're not following AMA rules. So if you launch from your boat, right, and you suddenly crash into the cruise ship next to you, and said, oh yeah, I launched because I was launching with my hand. Oh, okay, you're not covered. Or you had somebody try to catch that thing, hand catch it, and they chopped up their hand pretty good. You're not covered. So you do have to follow their rules.
Okay, well, here's another one for you. Draymond wants to know, does AMA insurance cover commercial work?
So
that's a good question.
That is a good question. The answer is no, in the terms of the just the $75 insurance. So the $75 yearly membership dues, that is only for recreational flight. But the AMA does have an offering for commercial operators. So they do have a Part 107 insurance. It's an additional cost, right? It's still very reasonable, same as you get from Global Aerospace or some of the others. And you can have commercial operations under that. But you do have to make that distinction. Hey, I need to have that insurance, and it'll be a separate charge.
All right. I want to just ask one more
question.
That
is only for members, right?
Say that again? Herman?
That is only covered for members.
For members.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. I want to ask you one more question, Ryan, but I want to point out, Ryan has a Facebook link. If you're ever in trouble, I'm not saying you crashed a drone in a tree and a cat won't let you in the yard, stuff like that. But if you have issues, Ryan is the man to hit up. Charles Hatmaker has something to ask. What if you're in a rural area, Harlan, Kentucky, nothing but mountains, there's no clubs? What do I do recreationally?
Fly. Yeah, so that's the nice piece, is that if you're off in the mountains, the likelihood, do check before you fly, or air control is the application. Check your airspace, right? But the likelihood is that you are in a Class G situation. So Class G is the Wild West of airspace. Go ahead and fly. Fly according to the CBO safety guidelines, so that you know that, hey, you're following the correct rules of the airspace, and then that means keeping it within visual line of sight, keeping under 400 AGL. Don't be stupid, right? and you're going to be just fine.
Well, Ryan, what I wanted to ask you more so with this advisory circular 89 part 3 that covers the areas, like what does this really pertain to? I've read most of it. I understand where they're coming from and the difference of, I've looked at fixed sites, FRIAs, everything like that. And if you could, and I know that a lot of this topic has come up recently. If you can, I don't know if there's any one way to make it clear without attacking pieces of it as far as education and everything is concerned with this. Like,
there's a couple things to unpack in there, right? So the first is CBOs. Yeah. So first is CBOs, community-based organizations. One of the neat things about the FMRA of 2018 was that the Congress had said, hey, you need to define what CBOs are. They had previously had it in the 2012 FMRA, but it wasn't ever defined. And so Congress finally said to the FAA, hey, give this some structure. We need to know what this is. It was originally intended for the AMA, right? But you can't have a monopoly on that in the United States. So that's where Congress said, define it. We're going to open it up to different organizations. So if you are a 501c3 organization, right? So, and that could be most every PTO in the United States is a 501c3. Okay. Any types of charity, right? They are 501c3.
Right.
So you are proving yourself as a community service, so to speak. And you are doing that with the federal government. So right there, you've got your start. Now you have to apply to the FAA to say, hey, I want to be a CBO. And when you apply, you're going to have to give them your guidelines. What are my safety guidelines that I'm going to require? So it's giving it structure. What is my membership, requirements? How am I going to operate? What requirements am I going to make of my membership in order to fly as part of my club, right? Schools, especially, because schools are called out in 89-3, right?
Exactly.
They can request, hey, can I get a FRIA or can I have a fixed site? And it then is going to allow for their students to operate drones that don't have remote ID. These are going to be cheap drones, right? You don't want your second grader to be out there flying a $400 drone. No, and let's get a Tello out and we're going to fly them outside. So that's going to allow for those organizations to say, okay, I'm applying to be a CBO. Please approve me. Here's my guidelines. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to designate this playground to be our flying area. And that playground then doesn't have to have remote ID for any of the drones that are flying in it, right? And I can then specify to my membership, all right, you've got a Tello, you don't have to have remote ID. You're going to be flying completely under the recreational rule sets, and you're going to be following our guidelines. So that can be a very big thing, right? Because otherwise, how's a school going to teach our next generation of pilots?
Exactly.
Right. So that's what we have to have.
Well, Ryan, from my knowledge, that the AMA had to apply for FRIA status for their airfields, and some of their airfields are actually fixed sites.
Yes.
And have letters of agreement from the FAA to operate, because I don't know if many people know, like, fixed sites flights are in controlled airspace areas that, like we have a airfield here in New York, which is in Flushing. If that's not in controlled airspace, I don't know what it is. You can read the numbers on the belly of the plane when they fly over.
This is true. This is very true. You can literally, on some days, be like, wow, I can see writing on the tires. It's that close, Ryan. And in
Oh
fact,
yeah.
hold on a second. If you give me a second,
So
I'm
like
going to just show you how close it is in comparison to where other fields are. This is the airfield in Flushing Meadows. Well, this is Flushing Meadows Corona Park. The airfield is right here, the model airplane field. Now, once I zoom out, LaGuardia Airport is right here, and it's less than a mile from the park. The airfield is down here in this area here. Oh, here it is, airfield. There's the airport and the end of the runway. Literally, you can see
Oh, yeah.
everything under the planes.
Well, and Herman's educating everybody here. He brought up the LOA, right? The LOA, the letter of agreement, and that's old school term, right? What happened is, and I want to say it's back in the 1970s when it started. The AMA went to the FAA and said, "Hey, look, we need to be able to fly at some of these locations that other airplanes fly at." So a lot of times AMA will have their own fields where they've created their own runways, but more often than not, they've gone to airports and said, "Hey, you already have an airstrip. Can we use that on certain days at certain times?" And so they've sat down with the air traffic control, they've sat down with the FAA, and they've come to an agreement. You have an ability to operate at this specific location for these specific times during the day or evening, and it spells out each and every area of how you're going to operate, whether that's maximum height restricted, a radius of operation, and you've agreed to that in writing. So it's a contract between the organization and the FAA and the airport to say this is it. And so that's exactly what's happening with these fixed sites. Is they've had to go back and apply to the FAA to get their fixed site approval, right? And the FAA has gone through and said, "Yep, you've got your letter of agreement. Everything looks in order," and they've approved. I think there's 237 right now that are approved. It's quite large, but it's all at AMA fields. We don't yet have a CBO that's not AMA who has approved sites. So that's something that we're anticipating is going to happen. There are other CBOs that are starting to stand up and say, "Hey, FAA, I want to be part of this." The Boy Scouts of America, I really truly suspect they're going to be one shortly.
Are they still around?
Yeah, go figure.
Wow.
They incorporated the Girl Scouts. They're growing.
Okay. Yeah, from my knowledge, I understand that this takes about 90 days. That's the FAA's, base application thing, 90 days. And
I would say that's they say 90 days, but whenever the FAA has a deadline, they miss it.
Look out. Yeah, 90 days for application for these things, and the freer status is good for 48 months or 4 years, whichever one you want to look at it as. But they say you must renew within 120 days of the expiration date.
Right, and if you get it denied, then it's gone. And that's I think that's one of the legal challenges that's coming up. Right, is that you potentially are going to see sites that get denied or that don't renew in time, and then they're going to try to come back and say, please approve this. And right now the FAA's stance is they're not going to do that. And I think that's a potential lawsuit.
That's going to become a lot.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be real interesting.
That was one of the things I think a couple of guys, I don't know if anybody in the chat has any questions as far as this is concerned, but the freers was a thing that a lot of people like, where where can I fly? Like we mentioned the sub 250, and I think that's the home of the sub 250 right there, because you won't be flying the sub 250, to my knowledge, in controlled airspace
or out of the line of sight.
Without, well,
and
without,
Lawrence, you hit it right. So this is the big one.
right.
When you say out of the line of sight, this is huge. So when we go back and look at 9357A or C, sorry, what this is setting up for is remote ID. And it's saying, hey, look, if you want to fly as a recreational flyer, you're going to stick to these rules. And these rules always are going to incorporate visual line of sight. No choice. We know that what's coming with remote ID, once remote ID is in place, then the FAA is going to relax the visual line of sight rules, but they're going to relax it for Part 107. So be on the lookout in the next couple of years. What we're going to see is, hey, if you want to fly beyond visual line of sight, you are going to have to go to Part 107. Don't expect it on the recreational side. And that's, I think, the big key in 9357C.
Right. Will they relax that for 107? Because from what my understanding of 107 is that it's kind of reaching its limits, and the FAA has mentioned that. A lot of these companies, we talk about Walmart and all these companies that want to do commercial drone operations, they're under Part 135. They're not under Part 107. They're not operating on them because Part 107 will not allow for beyond visual line of sight.
Right.
That's how it's written.
Yeah. That's the big key. But I think the hint came in the FMRA, right? Congress actually spelled out to the FAA, hey, we need to allow flight beyond visual line of sight with small UAS. So they were hinting already, find a way to make this happen. And that was one of the impetus for the remote ID, right? That the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, ATC, all those folks were saying, hey, we got to have this in order to identify aircraft. And the turnaround is okay, well, if you're going to be able to identify aircraft, you shouldn't have to be within 100 feet of the person. That person could be flying 1,000 feet away, or 1,500 feet, 10,000 feet away, right?
Right.
And one of the nice pieces that's coming with this, we know that remote ID is the feeder for the unmanned traffic modules that are coming, right? So NASA has developed a low altitude air traffic system that's going to be able to track and be able to identify for helicopters. Hey, you've got drones in your area.
Before you ask Lawrence, wanted to ask Ryan one other thing. So what you're saying is that there will come a time where the Bay Ridge to Bayonne trip will be legal flight.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it's coming.
Okay, well, it's a quick question, Draymond, who's a 107 pilot. Isn't a Part 135 for a company and not an individual pilot?
Correct.
Yep.
I had told him yes, but I would confirm and ask it as also, because I have been known to be wrong.
The reason why I mentioned that, Draymond, was because in listening to what the FAA has talked about with Part 107, and they've used that terminology that it has reached its limits, because it never thought that man would fly beyond visual line of sight. That's why I started the stream with where we've come from in 10 years, with the whole drone, to come down to talking about these things now, and I don't think that they even had this envision that this would happen until a few years ago when they started talking about better cameras, better sensors to be able to make this possible. It was a time when we didn't have sensors on a drone to be able to see these things. Now Walmart can tell if your dog is under the drone and won't deliver your package.
Okay, this is true. That's true. But here's something I just want to confirm whether I put in the chat was correct or not. But so basically, you're saying in order to fly beyond present day, in order to fly beyond visual line of sight, as well as being a Part 107 pilot, you would have to be a Part 135 in order to work for a company such as Walmart to fly a
No, the
drone beyond
company
visual
has it.
line of sight.
Well, or you can have a waiver, right? So Part
Yes.
107 waiver for allowing flight beyond visual line of sight. And so there are some of the waivers out there that have been approved.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, a person that's well known in the industry, Vic Moss, he just got a waiver to allow for flying his FPV without having a VO, right? So he's in a shielded operation below the treetops. He's in his backyard. He can throw on the goggles and he doesn't have to have visual line of sight in order to fly the drone. But that took a waiver to be written by the FAA and approved for him to be able to do that. I think what you're going to see with, once remote ID comes into place next year, well, it's at the end of this year now, right? 2023 in December, we'll then start to see the FAA ease those beyond the line of sight restrictions. And they're doing it for a particular reason. We know that aircraft and drones are starting to commingle in the airspace. And there has not been the dire damage that everybody considered was going to happen. For years we heard, oh, well, drones are going to cause passenger jets to fall out of the skies. Hasn't happened. Drones are going to kill helicopter pirates. Doesn't happen.
Right.
So there's that safety record that's already proven itself. Now it's a matter of going back and saying, hey,
what are you saying,
let's get with the statistics here.
The Recovery One says that those pilots fly under the rule as Part 135 employees for a company. That's my net question. So those pilots don't need a Part 107, or will you need both?
Well, you're still going to need your Part 107 because you are operating
to get paid for hire.
Right.
Okay, I understand. Excuse me a second.
I just say, from my understanding, from what I have understood with like Matternet has Part 107 pilots who are operating under an airline that is operating under Part 135, which is Matternet airline. Yeah. They're operating with UPS and with Wakeman Hospital in that operation, but those pilots are 107 pilots.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to have two requirements. So, for instance, if you're going to spray, right, for agriculture, you want to spray crops with do crop dusting, but do it with a drone. You still have to have a 107, right? But you're also going to have that 131 in order to spray the substance onto the crops. So yeah, it's two different things.
Yeah, it's a lot. The freer status, I guess, was what most interest a lot of people, that the remote ID, the whole understanding of operating the sub 250 drones, because a lot of people thought that I can get it, I don't have to register it, I don't have to have remote ID, and I can just fly it next to the guy who has to have all of those things. And in the same area at the same time, whenever he's flying and whenever he's not flying. And I think that those are the things that really needed to be cleared up with a lot of people.
And I do think that, that's the continued challenge, especially for Part 107 operators, is that, hey, I've got what's the latest? I've got an FPV drone with a naked GoPro. I'm under 0.55 pounds. I want to fly it over this crowd of people and get a shot. Okay. Right. So on Part 107, I'm going to have to make sure that when I'm transitioning, I'm only going transition A to B. I'm not, circling over. I'm not hovering. And if I can do that, then I'm going to be okay with Part 107, right? Because I've got that Category 1 drone. Now, on the other side, I'm a recreational flyer and I'm looking at a concert and I go, hey, I've got the same thing. I've got an FPV drone, naked GoPro. My props are covered. It doesn't even matter if the props are covered at that point. I can say, you know what, I'm going to fly over the crowd. And technically, it is fully legal. There's nothing against that 44809 to fly over the crowd. There's no regulation that prohibits the flight over people. Now, again, the FAA is going to look at that flight and go, that was careless and reckless. I'm still going to push you over into the 107. But, that's the risk that you take, right?
Okay. I kind of missed what was happening. Sorry, stepped away, but I see Tony put, I think you're reaching there. If you're flying under an organization's umbrella, you do not need the 107 when you operate as a PIC under that rule. No, I missed that part.
I'm not sure about that, Tony. If you take your part 107, that's part of the questions that are on that test.
Yeah.
If you're flying for hire under an organization,
by no means necessary.
Has to have that.
And remember that when you get caught, right, the consequences go to you as the pilot, right? Number one. But then the organization who's hired you, if they know, right, I've known that you do not have the 107, I'm still putting you into the field to do this, then they're on the hook too. So, consider the consequences.
There is a separate, he's saying there is a separate agreement with the FAA.
I'd like to see that. So that'd be an LOA, right?
On what,
yeah, that's it. That sounds like an LOA to me.
That sounds like an LOA.
Yeah. Letter of agreement. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. It's good that you guys are getting involved and asking questions and
because that means that you guys are listening and engaging. And
that's true. That's true.
I think one of the challenges too that you'll see, and this goes back a ways, right? So we used to have what was called the 333 exemption. I don't know if you recall that.
With that.
So the 333 exemption was that you could have a pilot that was able to operate a drone without a Part 107 because they had a 333 exemption. So that meant that they were licensed elsewhere, right? What you had is a bunch of folks that said, "Oh, I can get a 333 pilot to sponsor me." So we had it here in Michigan. There was an individual who had a 333. They had a couple other individuals that wanted to start a business, and they said, "Hey, can we fly under your 333?" And the guy said, "Sure, why not?" Wasn't anywhere near them when they were flying. In fact, they were hundreds of miles apart. And those guys were flying, for hire, and didn't have any business doing so. But that was the 333 fiasco. I'll say a fiasco.
Lawrence, is there any other thing that you'd like to know under these advisories? Is there anything that jumps out that you think? Or is anybody in the chat? Is there anything under these advisories? Lawrence, did you put the links to them in the chat?
I do have the advisories, and I have been posting them both periodically.
You did.
This is 89. This is 89.3. I'm posting again. I see a few people seem to be a little more interested in the 9157C. So I've been, like I said, I have
because
been
that
posting them
pertains to both
erratically.
Recreational and the distinction.
That's your operating rules, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Ryan, if you could kind of make it clear to guys, like, when am I flying under this rule, and when am I flying under that rule, and when is it necessary to say that, or can you get around it by saying I dropped my SD card and that 107 pilot picked it up and used my FPV footage over that in his company to show that footage? Can I get away with that?
That I think that's one of the most interesting questions that I always get, right? Is, hey, I flew and I got some fantastic shots, and this news station wants to show my stuff. Can I charge them to do that? Or I was just flying downtown and got this great picture of whatever building. And as I was flying, somebody over my shoulder said, I'll pay you for that picture. Right. Can you then sell that picture? And the answer is yeah. Right. So if you started flying as a recreational flyer, and you followed all the recreational regulations, and after the fact, somebody said, hey, I wanted to buy this, that, the FAA is not in the business of copyright. They are not in the business of regulating sales. They're in the business of safety.
Because
so
a lot of people
you've flown safely. Right.
True.
So now you've flown, you were fully recreational, and you can sell that. So a great example, we had
it's not like you're on the internet going, got these hot pictures for sale.
No, exactly. Yeah. Example, we had somebody that went on vacation. They were flying, and in the midst of the flight, a volcano erupted, and they caught the footage. Right? It's wow, there's a volcano erupting. So they land, and of course, every news agency is like
Associated Press.
Look at that, right? So that person said, hey, "Yeah, I'm game to sell this footage," and so made a bunch of money off of it. Well, the idea was, is that part one of stuff? No, she was on vacation. She was flying recreationally, following the recreational rules, and she had that footage. She could sell it. Now, so turn that around, right? There's a church. You're a member of a church, and they had a damage to their roof. And the pastor said, I can't afford to have roofers come out and take a look. Can you fly your drone up and see?
Right.
Well, if you're a recreational flyer and you said, yeah, I'll do that for you. Oops, you just became 107, right? Because you are not doing that out of your pure interest of recreation.
Out of worded very well. So out of pure recreation.
So it's somewhat similar to the same gray area as the education situation, that it has to be some form of recreation involved as well as teaching and research for those.
Oh boy! So now and that's that one icky sticky point in the regulation. So if it's for a institute of higher education, so we're talking college, right? So at a college level, if you are a professor and you are flying a drone and you're getting paid to fly that drone, it doesn't matter. You can fly under 44809. They have that carve out. You're flying to do research, right? As part of, whatever, go state. I'm going to,
a class project.
Research. Right. Yeah. So that is going to be exempt from 107. You can fly at 44809. Where they cut it off, right, is they said higher learning. So when you get down to high school, no, a high school teacher is not able to fly under 44809 if they're getting paid for it to teach. And to me, that's wrong, honestly, but that's the way it is. And so the advisory circular goes into that to say, look, these secondary schools, high school, even elementary schools, they could request to be a CBO. They could request to have a fixed site established on their playground, whatever. And then they could fly recreational at that location, right?
Okay. Okay, Ryan, I know we're running out of time here, but two really quick questions. Quadcopters and Tech came back and said that it's called a COA. And then God Bless America asked, is taking aerial pictures of friends' houses qualify me as a 107? And if I could answer that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you say give me $1 for it, yes. If you say I want to take a picture of your house and give it to you, no.
Correct.
If that's correct.
You could spell that out further, right? That you have that neighbor come over, hey, I'll give you $10 if you take a picture of my house, 107. Or you have the neighbor come over, hey, I'd really like to have an aerial photo of my house. Whether, just give me one. just take it. Go take it for free. No, that's 107. So even if it's not, you aren't receiving any money for it, that person has asked you for something, right? And that's not out of the goodness of your heart, not recreational.
So that the whole question of furtherance of a business, how does that fit into that situation? Because it's kind of still gray.
That's the murkiness, yeah. And I think they try to get away from that verbiage, right, of furtherance of a business. It's a challenge. So if I'm a farmer, right, and I've got cattle and I want to go count my cattle on a daily basis, and I'm going to fly my drone out to do that, I'm actually furthering my business as a farmer, right? I'm a cattle farmer, and that is helping me in my business. Now, I'm a farmer and I've got cattle out on the back 40. I want to go annoy them, see if I can spook them. Hey, you're having fun. Completely different situation, right? So it's all about intent. What am I really intending out of this flight? Are you just doing for shits and giggles? Okay, that's recreational.
So let me ask you this to make it quicker, guys.
And it's that time, guys.
If I say to Lawrence, okay, Lawrence, Tuesday we're going to go down to Court Street. We're going to take off, get a couple of passes of the court building, and we're going to go home. Right? I'm flying as recreational, right? So I say, Lawrence, okay, such and such as said we got to go down to Court Street and get a couple of passes. These are the shots that he wants of the court building downtown. What rule am I flying under?
You better be flying under 107.
And if on Wednesday I say, Lawrence, we're gonna go down there and just shoot some shots of the court buildings and go home. What am I flying under?
Yeah, so now you're just doing it for fun. Yeah.
Okay. So that kind of sets it even a little clearer for.
And let's go back to the quickly to say, if you're going out and flying and you sell that footage after the fact, right? You might get away with that once or twice, but if you make it a pattern, then, okay, no, that's 107.
Yeah, now you're abusing the law. But guys, it's that time.
Is it?
Ryan, wow. I needed you when I was working 10-hour shifts, bro. Because it would have went by so damn fast.
Go quick.
It seems to fly by when you're having fun.
There you go.
I hope some of you guys got a few things cleared up tonight, and I hope you guys, even further than what Draymond, what Recovery One Drones was able to help you guys out with.
Yes.
We do things a little differently here. We like to discuss things, and I open it up for guys to bring in your questions. We don't all know everything, but we can put our minds together and learn something.
True.
Along the way in the last few years or the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of partnerships come along the way with the FAA and many different companies. And without those partnerships and sharing of information, no one would have gotten this far. So we come here every week to share information, and if we can take something with you to help you out, then so be it. But like I said, me and Lawrence won't be here. We won't be here if you guys weren't here coming to hang out with us and to share this information with us. So we appreciate you all for coming and hanging out with us. Ryan, thank you for coming on and
thanks for having me on again.
With these
yes
advisories and
we're giving out that preempted law. I'm giving it out to people.
Pushing that out to
I've
people.
sent it out twice, 3 times. And I'm handing them out.
And just my push on that, right? So this is the time to hit with that preemptive law. We now have our new legislators in place, and this starts the session. This is when the bills start getting created. Right. So you did the groundwork to kind of hint to those folks who'd been around and got reelected. Hey, we need this. Now it's time to hit all those new legislators, right? This is their chance to put a bill in, and now it gets into committee, and we've got, a nice year to get this thing to push through.
Okay, one last thing, and we're out of here. Operation circumstances prohibited under Part 107 may be authorized by the government agency, COA. And we'll carry that on to another stream, but we got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we appreciate you all. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Ryan, thank you once again for coming and hanging out with me and Lawrence. And
yes, man.
You guys we always say, because we didn't get the sponsors in, but Wednesday night with those guys is sponsored by those guys.
Thank you
Good night,
much,
everyone. See you later.
We're out of here.
Good night, everyone. And that's the end of the stream.
Ryan, thank you so much, man.
All right, thank you, man.
Hey, thank you.